Who has ever set a goal before? Say it like you mean it. Who has ever set a goal before? There we go. All of us. So if we've all set goals before, we know what it's like when you set a goal and then you start working towards it and you're just like killing it. You're on track and everything is great. You know what that feeling's like, right? It's a good feeling. But if you set a goal before, you also know what it feels like to set a goal and then you're starting to fall short a little bit and you're not making it and you're disappointed a little bit and you get in a rut and you lose your motivation and it's hard to get up and get after it, right? You know what that's like then, right? So I used to run track and cross country back in high school, which was a lot of years ago and a lot of pounds ago, okay? We used to run and it was so fun to train every day and to race every day, and we used to get up and run 10 miles a day and stuff like that. It was so fun to get up and get after it and to race people and that was so fun. But you know what wasn't fun sometimes? Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to run 10 miles, right? Some days we just lose our motivation for life. Am I right? Like Dustin said earlier, it was a rough week. And I'm thankful that he can get up here and say, it's been a rough week. And we changed some songs around because I just wanted to be real. I'm grateful that we have leaders like that because they can say that and be themselves here, which sets us free. As people sit here, we can say, we can come here to church every single week and be ourselves in. No mask, no shame. It's been a rough week for us too, right? I love that we can say that here. I love that our leaders do that here. That is super cool. But the question I asked starting out the message is, why do we lose our motivation for life sometimes? Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's hard to get out the bed. We're dragging. Some days we're not excited about our job. We're not, let's get ready and like go to work today. I'm so excited. Like the feeling is just not there. Some days we're not even excited to come to church, right? It might be because it's a Super Bowl, but some days we just don't feel it, right? Can we be honest? Some days we're just here because that's what we do on the weekends. That's what we do at Sunday. We go to church. But we're just not feeling it. We're just not excited to come and for what God has for us and what he's going to share and what Dustin's going to say. And it's just going to be so amazing. Sometimes we just don't feel like that, right? But why does that happen to us? Why do we lose that motivation? A couple months ago, I was sitting and I was thinking, and I had lost my motivation, my extra, my passion, my drive, my excitement for life. It happened to me. And I don't know how long it lasted. I'm not saying that it was like that for months or weeks or anything. I just remember the thought. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, what happened? You know? I don't know how I got here. How many of you have ever driven home, but you don't know how you got there? You're like, right? I don't remember the freeway, the turn. I was supposed to turn left. I don't remember that, right? But you're home. It was kind of like that. I was sitting there, I was thinking, how did I get here? And with that, should I stay here? Should I settle for staying in the funk that I'm in? Should I settle for staying in the rut that I found myself in? Should I settle for keeping the motivation lost that I lost? Or should I look for it? Should I try to find it? I would say that many of us sitting in this room, yeah, we have problems. We probably don't have big, major problems, the sky's falling, the ceiling's cracking type of problems. We're just normal people. And for some of us, when we lose our motivation, we lose that spark, we lose that extra, life is just going. It's not terrible, it's just going. Just blah, right? Should we stay there? Is this how life is supposed to be? Are these moments supposed to happen to us regularly? Should we just settle for the blah of life? Should we settle for the lack of motivation? Should we settle for the lack of joy? Should we settle for the lack of excitement, passion, and purpose? Should we just stay there? Should we just accept it? And as I was sitting there thinking that, a verse came into mind that Jesus was talking about, and it is in his biography, one of them, the book of John. And he says that I came to give you life, and life to the full, right? I came to give you life abundantly. So in that moment, what do I do when I'm wrestling with this, but I'm hearing this verse? I'm not living abundant life. I'm not thinking life to the full. It's just blah, right? Should we just accept it? Or is there something more? Or do we fight to get out of it? Or do we fight to find that motivation again? I think this right here, this message, Dustin saying it's been a rough week and being honest about it, is the perfect message coming off of the heels of our Reset series. The series that we just did talking about goal setting, talking about values. It's the perfect timing of that because oftentimes we do set our goals in December and January, and then months down the road, we're like, what happened to that goal that I set? Right? We set it and forget it almost. What happens when life doesn't go our way? What happens when we get stuck in the rut of life? What happens when we lose our motivations? What happens in those moments? So next question I ask is, why does it happen to us? Why does it happen to me? Why does it happen to me? You ask yourself, why? I think the answer is because we lost our motivation. When it's hard to get up out of bed and run 10 miles because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's because we forgot why we're doing it. When it's hard to go to work and we don't really care, and it's hard to go to church, it's because we forgot what church gives us. We forgot what our job gives us. We forgot why we're doing what we're doing. Those values, those principles that Mike's talked about in the last series. So I ask again, what are your motivations? These are the things we have to remember when we get in the rut. So what is your motivation? Why do you go to work every day? Why do you do what you do at work? Is it for money? It's okay. It's a motivation. I wouldn't do my job if they didn't pay me. I'll tell you that. Do you do it for your wife, for your kids, for your family, for your friends? We have to remember those things. And those are great motivations, all of them. I want my wife to be proud of me and look at me and say, I'm so proud how my husband loved me, how he took care of me, how he sacrificed for me. I want her to say the same. My family, I want them to be able to say, I loved how he was there for me when I needed him the most. I want my future kids to be able to say, I love how their dad sacrificed for them, how he ran for Jesus, how he gave his best for Jesus. Those are great motivations. And I want them to be able to look up and say, because of the incredible life that my dad lived and what he did for Jesus and what he did to other people, he inspired other people, I'm going to go for it too. That's a great motivation. And for some of us, God is our ultimate motivation. We just forget sometimes. We just forget why we're doing what we're doing. We just get stuck in the rut sometimes. That's okay. How do we get out of it? We got to remember our motivation. Remember that we want to say, God, we want you to be proud of us at the end of the day. We have to remember that. That'll get you up in the morning. You have to remember, God, we want God to be able to say, well done, son. Well done, daughter. We have to remember, and we forget that sometimes, don't we? I was sitting there thinking, and then I thought of the Apostle Paul. And this is why I say, this is a message that God preached to me a couple months ago when I needed it. I was thinking of the Apostle Paul because he went through hard stuff. He was arrested many times. He was in prison many times. He was stoned. He was beaten. All those things for just being a Christian. He went through struggles. And we're all sitting in this room. We go through struggles. We lose our motivation. We go through things. Life gets hard sometimes. It gets tough. Yes, it does. But we're going to look at Paul's example and how he kept his motivation and see if that can't help us when we go through what we're going through. Sound good? So I thought of the Apostle Paul, and one thing came to mind was in the book of Romans. He was writing a letter to a church in Rome, and he said this in chapter 8 of that book to the church. In chapter 8, verse 17, it's about the second sentence. Now if we are children, right, we're children of God, and we're heirs with him, if indeed we share in his sufferings. If we share in his sufferings, that we may also share in his glory. I consider what I'm going through right now, verse 18, it says, I consider our present sufferings not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. What he says is this, it's going to get hard. In fact, it is hard presently. My present sufferings, what I'm going through is really hard. But you know what? I'm thinking about the end. I'm thinking about what God is going to do at the end. That is going to keep me motivated all the way throughout. He never forgot his motivation. He never lost sight of why he was doing what he was doing. We do sometimes. Confession. We have to remember. Just like Paul. He says, you know what? If I give my best and I maintain motivation and I keep running and I keep pressing forward, it's not only going to change my life, it's going to change the lives of so many people. Not only am I going to know what life with Jesus is all about, so many other people are too because of me. And we are sitting here thousands of years later because of Paul. Because he kept going, because he remembered why he was doing what he was doing, because he didn't just sit there in the rut when he was stuck. He kept his motivation, he kept his eye on the prize. He kept going. We're here because of him. We can learn so much. Then also I think about the writer of the book of Hebrews. It's also in the New Testament, the section of the Bible that was written after Jesus. And the writer of Hebrews says this in chapter 12. Because we're surrounded by so many people and we do relationships with so many people, there's always people watching us. Because of that, in Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1, it says, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, because of that, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance. Keep going the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, who is the pioneer and perfecter of the faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Jesus did, scorning its shame, and he sat down after that to the right hand of the throne of God. So consider him, consider Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinners so that we won't grow weary and lose heart. They said, yeah, we're going to suffer now. That's okay, because God is doing something bigger. Because God has a bigger plan. He has a greater plan. He has a purpose for all of this. They never lost sight of that. If we always keep sight and keep focus of that, this is nothing. This is nothing. We will never stay there. We will never stay stuck there because this isn't okay. If we stay here, the lives of our friends, family, spouses, they're all sacrificed. Paul understood what was at stake. So many people are watching him. So many others' lives are affected by him. So I can't stay here. I can't stay in the ruck when I get stuck there. I got to get out. I got to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. I have to remember my motivation. Paul knew that. And we could learn that from him. I'm throwing off everything, the writer says, so that I can run this race, using the term run again in the Bible. So I can run with perseverance. And I'm going to look at Jesus because even Jesus was looking forward to the glory that was before him. So the cross, although no matter how painful it is, he endured it gladly because he loved you, because he loved me, because he loved you, because he loved me. He endured it gladly. Gladly. And every day presenting an opportunity, whether good, bad, or ugly for Paul, he accepted it. Willingly, gladly, and eagerly. Because he said, you know what? I am suffering for God. And God's going to do something at the end. Paul says, I want to be proud of my life at the end. I want God to be proud of my life at the end. And that right there was all the motivation he needed to keep going. He never lost sight of the end and why he was doing what he was doing. Some of you guys sitting here, you need purpose. You need hope. You don't know if God loves you. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I don't know where you are, but you do. And you need to hear this. Keep going. Keep going. Paul wanted himself to be proud of his life, and he wanted God to be proud of his life at the end. He wanted to say that I gave everything that I could. If you look at your life right now, could you say the same thing? That you are proud of the way that you live. Would other people say the same thing about you? That they are proud of their friend, their daughter, their aunt, their uncle, their husband, their wife, their mom, their dad, that they are proud of you? Could they say that? Mike talked a couple weeks ago about living life with no regrets. Could you say that you're doing everything you can to live with no regrets? Or unfortunately, would you say that you've wasted your run? Paul never lost sight of why he was doing what he was doing. And trust me, it got ugly for him sometimes. It got hard. It got very, very hard. But he never lost focus. He didn't waste his run. We got to remember our motivation and why we do what we do. So how do we do it? What do we do? That's a great message, but what do I need to do? I say three things. Number one, we learn from Paul's example. Number one, we run with the end in mind. Run with the end in mind. Remember I said Paul, he had this goal of wanting to be able to say, at the end of the day, I did everything I could. He wrote a letter to his son Timothy. He wrote two of them. And in the first one, he says, at the end of my life, I want to be able to say that I ran the good race. I fought the good fight. I kept the faith. That was his goal, and that kept him motivated. And then right before he died, he wrote a second letter to that same son Timothy. And he says this in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 7. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now, there is in store for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord will award to me on that great day. But not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Don't you want God to be able to say that to you? Hey, here's a crown. Don't you want to live your life like that, chasing the crown? Paul says, look, I have fought the good fight. I've ran the good race. I've kept the faith. I have done everything that I said that I was going to do. I have finished. I have kept going. I've finished and fought to the very end. I'm done. I'm done. God's got something for me. But yeah, just so you don't think I'm some super spiritual guy that God's going to give this crown to, he'll also give it to everybody. Everybody who didn't quit. Everybody who kept fighting. Everybody who ran the race. Everybody who ran with the end in mind. Everybody who knew what life with Jesus was all about. He's going to give that to all of us. And Paul says, I have a goal. I'm running with the end in mind. Anyone who runs a race is thinking about the finish line. Because it's going to get hard in mile 2. It's going to get hard in mile 6. It's going to get hard in mile 12. It's going to get harder in mile 20. He was thinking about the end. What do I want people to be able to say? What do I want to be able to say at the end? Think about the finish. Think about why you're doing what you're doing. And trust me, when it gets hard in mile 12 and it gets hard in mile 20, that's all the motivation you need is the finish and the reward. Paul says, I'm not just running to run. I'm running to win. I'm running for the prize. I'm running for the glory. I'm thinking about the end. And that right there is all the motivation that I need. So for us, I say, don't lose sight of the end. Don't lose sight of why we started. Don't lose sight of the goal that you set for yourself. Don't lose sight of the values that you have and why you're doing what you're doing. Don't lose sight. Run with the end in mind. Number one. Number two, run confidently. Run confidently. Paul knew that it was going to get hard, and it got hard. But he also saw every day as an opportunity. Run confidently. God is giving us every day as a chance to not only know what life with Jesus is all about, but to show what life with Jesus is all about. Our wives, our husbands, our kids, they're our only chance at being a parent, at being a husband, at being a good friend, at being So we have to show and prove. We have to run confidently. We have to take advantage of those opportunities that God is giving us. Look, God says he's going to come back at the end of the day. He will. But the end of the day is not today, is it? We're still sitting here in this room. He's not come back yet. So today is an opportunity. It's an opportunity, and it should excite us. Run confidently, understanding that the worst day of your life, you've lived through it. Think about that for you. The worst day of your life so far, you have lived through it. It's an opportunity. Today is, every day is, and it should excite us. So run confidently. Run with the end in mind. And number 3, run offensively. Run offensively. God is a good Father. God is a great God. And he wants to give us good things. And he wants us to give a life filled with dreams and hope and destiny and all these incredible things. He wants to give us life to the full. He wants to give us abundant life. But sometimes life happens, right? But sometimes we have hard weeks, like Dustin said. But sometimes we get stuck in the rut. Sometimes we do lose our motivation, right? In those times, we have to do something. In those times, we have to grab hold of that destiny and not sit and let life happen to us. We have to happen to life, okay? The battle of the mind, what happens between both ears sometimes is the hardest battle we'll ever face. The lies that we believe that we're not to be loved, that we're not worthy, that God doesn't love us, right? Self-image, depression, all these things. This right here is such a hard battle. And the Apostle Paul, same guy, talks about what happens in between your mind when those thoughts come in and how we can run offensively. He says this in 2 Corinthians, another letter he wrote to a different church, about those thoughts. He says in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 5, when they come in, we should take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. At the end right there, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We don't have to play the victim. We can take part in our own story. When these thoughts happen, Paul says, take them captive, grab hold of them, attack, bound them. You don't have to believe them anymore. They're not true, they're lies. We have to do something. We have to choose to not believe them. We have to choose to think that God loves us. We have to choose to love people and trust people. We have to choose how we feel every day. We have to choose what we do every day. But oftentimes how we think about those things has such a great effect on it, doesn't it? We have to choose to run offensively. Now, the Super Bowl's today. And one of the biggest stories between both teams is the Eagles' defense versus the Patriots' offense. And I've heard it said this way, you may have heard it too, that the greatest attack against a strong defense is a what? Strong offense, yeah. Defense can play great defense, but sometimes it's just better offense. And when that comes to our life and our motivation and our walk, sometimes we have to attack. Sometimes we can't play the victim anymore. We have to play a part in our own story, and that means we have to have strategy. So when it comes to setting those goals, which oftentimes we set and forget, sometimes we have to set those goals, put a reminder in our phone every week to remind us to assess our goals. I did that. I actually did that. So every Saturday, a notification comes up and tells me to assess my 2018 goals. That's an offensive move so that it doesn't get weeks and weeks and weeks of months without me thinking about it. And then it's March and April and I'm like, that goal is so far gone. We have to think offensively sometimes. We have to say, whatever that motivation for you, your kids, your wife, your God, your friends, how are you doing on that? How are you doing on that? We have to remind ourselves sometimes. Sometimes we have to run offensively. And Mike said it a couple weeks ago, good enough is never good enough. And I don't know where you are, but you do. So I ask this, where are you at on those three? Which one of those three do you look at and you say, I need to do some work on this week, this month? Do you need to run with the end in mind? Do you need to remember why you started what you're doing? Do you need to think about where you're going so that you don't get stuck in that rut? Is that where you are? Remembering those motivations? Maybe you need to run confidently and take advantage of the opportunities that God gives you every single day, eagerly, gladly, willingly. Maybe that's you. Or maybe the hardest part for you is fighting the battle in the mind, believing those lies. Where are you at? I don't know. But I know in this room, there's people going through a lot of things. Financial things, family things, marriage things, friendships and relationships things, parents things, identity things, depression, fear, thought, anxiety. There's a lot of things. I don't know them, but God does, and you do. And God's telling me to tell you to hold on, to keep fighting, don't give up. And maybe you're sitting here saying, look, this is the last chance I'm giving God. I'm going to go to church one last time, and if he doesn't show up, I'm done. Okay. I'm here to tell you that he's here. I'm here to tell you that he did show up. I'm here to tell you that he does love you. He does care about you. He is right here. I'm here to tell you that you do deserve to be loved, that you are a part of his story. Can you imagine what your life would be like if you took those three things and you applied them? Can you imagine what all of our lives and the whole church would be like if all of us applied all three of those? Can you even imagine? The sky's the limit, right? Paul understood that this was his only run in life. No dress rehearsal. No second chance. This is it. This is your run. He understood that this was his run. So I say this, don't waste your run. And that leaves us to our message in a tweet, that this is the run of our life. Okay? So let's run with our lives because we're in the run of our lives. This is the run of our lives. So let's run. So let's run. So let's run. Yeah? Would you pray with me? Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for this message and this moment that we will never get back again. This moment is precious. This moment is special. And what you're telling us in our hearts is specific to this moment. I thank you that you give us an opportunity every day to run and that we can run with our lives because this is the run of our lives. Paul understood that, and I pray that we would too. And I pray that we would run with the end in mind. I pray that we would run confidently, and I pray that we would run offensively, attack, guard our minds, don't believe those lies, remember our motivations. I pray that we would take that message, hold it in our heart, and we would leave differently and changed today. And we would apply these three things today and this week. Because this is our only shot, God. And I pray that we would make you proud. We love you and we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen.